Okay. I'm rolling on this. Check, check. Hi, Evan. How's it going? Okay. So we're downloading these two files. Whoops. Where are they? Downloads folder. All right, I'm going to open up After Effects. I'm going to start a new project. We'll call it Motion Tracking Demo 02. And then let's import from our desktop each of those files. So I'm importing my plate shot, which is the computer screen image, and then the groovy piano cat, right? Because why wouldn't we want to do that? And then this is a 10-second shot, same thing as before. Usually motion tracking stuff doesn't last very long. We looked at that whole scene. That whole scene from that TV show was based on one long shot, but it was cut back and forth between the low angle shot of the girl looking at the back of, at the phone from the back side of the phone to the over the shoulder shot. So, and again, it was all pretty simple. So we could take this whole thing and let's grab this file and just make a new composition using the file. I guess the file is titled 00003. So grab that, make a new composition with that. Play through it. There's no sound on it, and that's the shot. And the challenge for this shot is that about halfway through, maybe a third, almost halfway through the screen, this right side of the monitor here goes off screen for a little while, right? And we know from motion tracking with the point tracker that would be problematic for that to work. So the challenge that we're going to have is, of course, we could use this image right here and work just fine with it, but we're going to use this. Now, I know this is my monitor. This is a 16:9 monitor, so that's what we're going to use as our replacement element that's going to go in there. We know that it's going to be a 16:9 composition, which is going to work really well. So we can go into the challenge of something that's other than 16:9 also after we do this. But okay, so once we have this file placed in a composition, we're going to go up to Animate, Animation, and then Track in Mocha AE down below there. Okay. And what's going to happen is you're going to see AE bouncing down in your dock over here. So it's actually opening up a standalone application, and you'll click on it, and it's going to ask you for registration. Does everybody have that? Hit register later, please. We're not registering it. And then do you get this little thing that says it appears that this is the first time Mocha has been run on this machine? If you don't, that's okay. If you do see this, would you like to configure Mocha AE now? We can just say no. We don't need to worry about that. This splash screen, we're not going to view the manual at this time. We can select, we don't want to show this next time, but just hit start. Okay? Now, the next scene, or next splash screen that shows up, pay attention to what this is. This is your project interface for Mocha. And notice what's in here. We're sending the source footage from After Effects to Mocha. Mocha is loading all of the information from our After Effects timeline and the file itself right into this Mocha project. So we really don't need to do anything beyond just leave this as it is, because it's taking all the parameters from the file and from the After Effects sequence and project and just loading it up into Mocha, and all is as it should be with this. So.
And we don't need the cat shot in our comp at all?
Say again?
We don't need that cat shot or video clip in the comp?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Because what we're doing, so the question was, do we need the cat shot, which is our effects shot? That's what we're replacing the screen with. That comes later. What we're doing in Mocha is getting tracking data, like we did when we did the apply button in the point tracker, and then we're going to copy and paste all that tracking data from Mocha into After Effects, apply it to a null, copy it to a null object, and then basically we're going to take that image or that video file of the cat, use whatever video file you want. We're going to just basically apply that tracking data to it so that it sticks where it should. So, okay, it's a little bit weird, but in principle, it's the same process as what the point tracker does. It's just making point tracker tracking data, making a ton of keyframes. You're copying all that stuff. Except instead of it all being within After Effects and copying tracking data and applying it to something else, we're doing it outside of After Effects because Mocha does things differently than After Effects. That's the principle of what we're doing. So in this case, we're just going to hit OK because everything is as it should be here. So hit OK. And I'm going to stretch this out to make it fit the screen. And first and foremost is, of course, this is a different interface than After Effects. So it will take a little bit of getting used to do this. All right, you ready? This down here is your playhead. You can scrub through the footage with this. This red mark right here is an in point, okay? There's a red marker off to the right side of your timeline down here. That's an out point. If I put my playhead somewhere like this, off to the side, I can, right over here, I can set an out point with this, set an in point with this. I can also take this all the way to the end again. Let's go, come on, to the end and set my out point. Over there I can drag that out. So ins and out points in Mocha are the area where you're starting and stopping your tracking. So if I have an entire clip and I don't want to start tracking data, creating tracking data until 30 frames or 15 frames or however many frames into the shot, that's okay. In this case, the process, we're just going to do the entire 10-second shot. So just leave your in and out points at the beginning and ending of the entire clip. There's playback. These things are not, these are not your analyze forward and backwards. Right here where it says track, this is track forward and backwards. That's just like the track forward and backward in After Effects. This is track forward, this is track forward frame by frame. Follow that? I hope the camera can see me pointing at those things. So anyway, so these are zoom functions. I can zoom in to the in and out points or zoom out to the full range, whatever I've got. Okay, over here are layer controls. Basically what we're going to be doing is creating what's called a spline. So we're going to be making a shape. The way Mocha works compared to After Effects, and I believe Motion, from the little bit that I've seen of motion tracking in Motion, is Motion really only does point tracking, right? So I place a point. Does Motion do multiple point tracks? Yeah. Okay, so I can apply 2 or 3 points for it to track, and it sticks pretty well. And I would assume that the same thing happens if something obscures one of those points, that motion track kind of starts to go astray, right? Same thing with After Effects, except in Motion, instead of finding the point track like up here and just using this one point track, because we know from looking at this shot, if I were to use this nice high contrast point in the corner here as my point track, this side of the screen goes off the screen over here. We're going to lose that track. So what Mocha does differently is I'm going to select an area around this entire screen, and Mocha is going to track that entire plane. Regardless of whether this goes off screen or not, it still has enough of the plane for it to interpret where it's going to go. Maybe this will fall apart on us, maybe it won't. Hopefully it won't. If I remember correctly, this shot works pretty well for this effect. So up here we've got a pen tool, the X, and then the X plus and the B plus, those things. So we're going to work with the X, and it's what's called an X spline. Okay? And then we'll use a couple other things. We're going to use this little grid thing here. We're going to use this specifically. This is our screen replacement tool. So this is really important right here, showing the planar surface. And that planar term is a big deal in Mocha because it's called a planar tracking system. In theory, meaning it's tracking a plane, like a group of pixels, an area of pixels, instead of just 1 or 2 or 3 pixel range, right? So that's where it differs from After Effects primarily. But so these couple of things right up here are 2 things that we're going to be using, this thing and then this thing right here. Okay. First of all, let's go to the X-spline. In fact, let's just pause for a second. This hand tool, then this thing are things that we may be using as well, but primarily the tools that are really important to understand for this particular process that we're using. Now, you can also go very deep down many, many rabbit holes and use Mocha for many other things than just screen replacement. You can use this for just general motion tracking. If I want to track a small little thing or text, you can do that. You can use this for image stabilization, the very manual process of image stabilization, other than using warp stabilizer or whatever. So the screen replacement thing is just one of many processes and tools that you can use. This is often, at its higher level, this I think is considered like a light version of Mocha. At its higher levels, it's got more whiz-bangs built into it, and this is a tool that is really commonly used in the entertainment industry for rotoscoping, okay? Because we're going to be making one layer to do a track, just like you can make many, many masks in After Effects and have them across. You can do rotoscoping in After Effects as well. Working in Mocha is a similar process for rotoscoping. Basically, I can, if I need to remove somebody's arm from here to here, at the course of an arm movement over 5 frames or something like that, it's a matter of creating, a shape around the elbow and then a shape around here, and just animating those series of masks over the course of the movement of that arm, and then erasing them, or replacing them or something. So anyway, so Mocha can be used a lot different ways. So the tools that we're going to be using primarily is your pointer tool, your hand tool, the zoom tool, this X-spline tool up here, and then the show planar surface, and then showing the planar grid. So these other things down here, don't necessarily concern yourself too much with them at this point. So let's start out by selecting the X-spline tool. And when you select it, you get a crosshairs. And we're going to start by creating just a box around this screen here. Okay, so we're going to kind of create a shape around that. And then I'll show you a couple of things we can do. So I'm going to select over here. And then I've got a red thing that goes out here, and I'm going to kind of go like this and create a shape around that thing. And then I'm going to right click to deselect it, or not deselect it, but to kind of complete or close up the shape. Okay, so basically what I've done is I've created a general area around the screen. That's going to be my tracking area.
How do you get rid of an extra one?
You can undo.
Yeah, you can Command Z and undo it.
Over? Oh, but it's so perfect.
Yeah.
All right. I'll start over.
Now what we have is, what we've created is, over in our layer controls thing over here, is a layer basically. It's kind of a spline, which is creating a shape around which we're going to track something. Now, let's go and turn on. I have to remember how to do this here. Actually, notice where I'm at. Where is my playhead on my timeline here? Yeah, mine is all the way at the end. So kind of like what we did in After Effects. Remember how you always be aware of where your playhead is, because the whole process of motion tracking is very dependent on where your playhead is and tracking forward and backward from that point. So it usually behooves you to either be at the beginning or at the very end of your playhead for the purpose of starting a motion track, and if you're doing the entire clip. So you should be at the beginning or at the end. And if you're not, basically I would suggest selecting that layer, and I'm going to delete this layer, delete the selected layer. I'm going to put my playhead at the very beginning, and I'm going to start over. So I'm going to go to my X spline, and I'm going to start here, 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 and go down here, and right click. Okay? Now, see a little green dot right here on your timeline? That's a keyframe. So it's created one keyframe right at the beginning. All right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to track forward, and I'm going to see how this works. Before I do that, let's take a look down in our track tab down in the bottom. This is a part of the interface we haven't looked at quite yet. Down in the track motion, we're going to leave the pre-processing thing alone. We don't really need to play around with that. The motion tab next to that in the middle. Down here, we can see these things all were pretty similar to what we saw. Rotation, scale. We have shear and perspective. Those are a little bit different. But what this is doing is it's doing it like those are all different aspects that it's analyzing as you're tracking, right? So this, in theory, does probably a slightly different, and maybe depending on the footage, a better job than After Effects Point Tracker when your footage is going like this, right? So when the footage and the camera are kind of adding wobble like that, in theory, this is accounting for shear, which is stuff like this, movement that goes back and forth, causing z-space differential. So, all right. So I'm going to select perspective and kind of add that to it. And we're going to we'll leave this at large motion. That's some different analysis on how it processes the footage. And then I'm going to hit track forward, and we'll see how it works. Okay? And in theory, this is going to chug along for a little while. But in theory, we should see that spline follow along pretty well. Are you guys all tracking this forward? Okay. The challenge will be when it goes off screen, how well it keeps up, right? This is a pretty chunky file. It's a ProRes file. It's not the highest quality or well lit file in the world, but
so when the lady had her thumb over that, is that a matter of layering, and is that just a whole nother?
Yeah, they may have masked her thumb and tracked that, so that it was over top of it, because that's typically what you would have to do. So, yeah, I mean, it is entirely possible too that that wasn't motion tracked. I tend to think that it was, because that's usually how that stuff works. I would be surprised if that was actually playing on her screen, but maybe it was. I don't know.
Mine's starting to drift off really bad. Mine too.
Is it? Okay.
It's drifting off screen, but still holding the left side.
So mine has gone off screen, and I'm not seeing too much drift.
Yeah, I'm like half on the other monitor now.
I think it's where that left line is. Mine is really nice tight, and it's holding it really good. I don't know.
So part of the way this works is how far out and around the actual tracking element that you are. So this very similar to how After Effects works, is not always a rock solid tool. So it may take the problem is obviously we're watching this thing and it's kind of just slowly chunking along and it's not, not doing the best. So the challenge is then having to redo it and wait for it to do it again, right? So if it's not sticking very well, then my suggestion is stop, delete the layer, try another track around it or shape around it. And what you can do is you don't have to just leave it at 4 in the corners like this. You can make as many of those little track points around this shape as you want to further refine exactly where the track follows. So mine seems to have stuck pretty well as it comes back on screen. We'll see how it actually works in practice, though.
X spline tool.
Correct. And if you right-click on this layer up here that you created and go delete selected, that'll delete it and you can start over. So, and then put your playhead at the beginning of the timeline.
And then re-click the perspective for the motion tab too.
Yeah, I would.
Is it going to take this long to go through it?
Yeah, this is a ProRes file, so it's a pretty beefy file. I have a feeling that if we had a lower data rate file, it might go a little faster, but that's also part of it. I could have given you a 5-second file instead of 10 seconds too, but that would go pretty quick. So. It's almost done. At least mine is. Is anybody else's done? All right, so mine is done. I'm going to play it. And when I play it, it's actually playing backwards, which is kind of interesting. And there is, see this little tool right next to the playback controls here, change playback mode. This, when you see the 2 arrows going back and forth like that, that's called ping pong mode. It will actually play backwards and then forward and backwards and forward. It'll just keep going back and forth. Or if I switch this, it should loop it. That's loop mode. So that's just playback once and then ping pong. So here's a little bit of interesting thing that we can add to this. So if I turn this thing on, this grid on, and I scrub back and forth like this, see what happens? That grid is now acting as the planar surface. Okay, so if I play this back, that gives me a slight preview as to what this track looks like in perspective. Okay?
How'd you turn that on?
See the little grid button right up here?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then we have to forward again?
What's that?
You have to forward again or what?
Do you have to track it again?
Yes.
No. So turn the grid off, and then let's go to, once you have it tracked, is anybody doing it again?
Yeah, it's going to work better this time.
Okay. So one thing I'm going to do next is I'm going to go over to that button that's right next to the grid that says show the planar surface. It's got the little S in the middle of it. I'm going to turn that on, and this is an important step for the whole tracking part of this, for screen replacement specifically, okay? So when I hit that button that says has the S in it, all of a sudden I get this box on the center of the screen here. Each of these corners goes right up into the corner of the screen. So we're actually putting this shape that's going to define where the tracking points are. It's called the corner pin data that we're going to be sending out of Mocha into After Effects. So this is a tool that you use specifically for screen replacement. Okay, so I'm going to grab, let's say, this top left corner here, and look what happens when I get over on the side here. I get a little magnified view of where I'm placing that corner pin, and you kind of want that right on somewhere right inside that corner there, as close as you can get it, right? It's not going to be pixel perfect because the shot gets kind of fuzzy when you're zoomed way in on it. You're going to want to go right on down to each of those 4 corners of this screen and define the shape of this. Now I'm also about 3/4 of the way through my timeline here. And now when I turn on that grid will follow exactly that screen shape that I've just created.
Is that all using the S button?
Yep, that planar surface button. So once the track is done, you define the shape of the screen by placing those things in the corners of the screen that you want to replace. You can turn the grid on and it gives you a nice perspective for how the thing should follow with it, how the track follows perspective-wise. And it's probably having to load this into RAM to preview it, so that's why it kind of slows down a little bit.
So when there's one spot where it's just slightly off, is there a keyframe that you're gonna readjust it?
Yeah, and that is over in this thing called Adjust Track.
Okay.
So this tab next to Track, there is the tab that says Adjust Track. This gets a little confusing. Now, when you're over in Adjust Track, all of a sudden I've got little X's that show up on each of these corners like this. And basically what you want to do is scrub forward to the frame that you start to see the drift. And then you want to determine what corner do I need to fix, or where do I need to fix it at, right? And you create a new reference point, right? So let's say in this case, this grid right down here of these 4 corners, and then where it says auto in the center, up, down, right, and left, that's referencing these corner points of these things. So let's say I want to work on my bottom, down here on my bottom right area. If I need to adjust that, I'm going to select this. And I'm not going to, I don't need to fix anything on this thing, so I'm not going to actually do anything, but I would set a new reference keyframe. So new reference, this sets a new reference point to use in later frames, exactly as it is. So that's basically setting, that's the last keyframe, say that's where that's the last good spot where the thing holds. Anything forward in my timeline at that point is problematic. So I need to set a new reference keyframe to where that thing needs to go back to. Is that making sense? As I move forward, then I'm going to go frame by frame by frame forward. And I can find, like, I see drift at some point or other where it's not working right. Then I can either say I wanted to fix it by going auto, and that's letting the software fix, meaning this point needs to move over a couple of keyframes to go back where it belongs. I can tell the software by hitting auto to go back where I want it to, or I can adjust it myself and place it where I want to by clicking in there. Okay? I actually don't have any keyframes that I'm going to fix, so I'm going to hit, I don't want to hit reset here, but I actually don't need this keyframe, so.
So where did you go to pull up that menu?
It's Adjust Track right down here. It's right next to Track. Okay, I'm going to point out something. Now that we have the tracking done, now that we've got the grid turned on, we can see the perspective on our track. Let's see what something actually looks like tracked to this without actually loading anything or copying and pasting anything into After Effects. We get the ability to preview something. So we can insert a clip. So over here in Layer Properties, I've got this Layer 2, or my layer selected up here, Layer Properties down here. I can drop down and go to, I could put the same clip in there, I could put a logo, or I could put a grid in here. So let's put the logo in there, and there's our Mocha logo. Okay? Or if I switch to grid, it does some groovy grid like that. if I want to import an actual video clip in here, we could maybe import the cat clip that we're going to do. But basically, we're not actually doing the composite. This is just a little preview that allows Mocha to tell us how good is our track. So let's pick, I'm going to see how this works. I don't know if this is going to work too well. My system is running really slowly, so import, okay. I guess, here we go. All right, there's a blending mode that we can apply to this. That's is already applied to it. So anyway, all right, so I'm going to turn my grid off.
It's just in the video that has a
That's a great.
Okay. This whole process will go much faster if we just select the logo and do our track like that.
I don't know why I can't just use black.
So
That's
we
pretty
should
good
run-
tracking on the kitty.
So you put the logo back up on the screen and you track with the logo on it?
This track is this logo on there is just a preview. That's all it is. It's just to help you see the quality of your track and how much potential
So now,
drift you have
if
on your
don't
image.
Like it, then you can set the more keyframes to, because it's bleeding over just a little bit.
Correct. So the grids do the same thing. That basically, that gives you a little something potentially a little bit more mathematical and geometric to qualify the quality of the track.
It's like you just cut the line on the
Yeah.
video. Like the edge of something.
So I don't know how well you guys, I don't know how well your track did on your guys' software here, but would anybody say that it's decent? For some reason, mine worked out pretty rock solid. So
I like how it tracks a lot more. I just like the control you have. It makes a little more sense to me.
it's different than the point tracker. I don't want to say that you would never use the point tracker anymore, but it's a different way of tracking things. This isn't always perfect either. The challenge is, I think the biggest challenge at this point is just getting used to the new interface. That's a hard part about it. And then if your track doesn't stick very well in here, it's understanding this adjust track tab down here that's challenging too. Then it's a matter of knowing that you need to adjust you need to set keyframes, move forward a little bit, set a new keyframe, tell your track point that that's where you want it to stick. I do think that the adjust track in here is, even though it's somewhat confusing, it's a little bit more user-friendly than doing that same manual process or re-keyframing manually in After Effects is for the point tracker. So I guess once we have this set up, if your track is good and you're satisfied with it, the next step is to export this from Mocha and send it to After Effects. Okay? So are you ready for that? All right. So down here in our export data section, we're going to do just that. We're exporting tracking data, not shape data, but export tracking data. So select that, and you get a box that says, what do you want to export? And if you drop that down, it will say After Effects corner pin only, supports RG warp and Mocha import. To be honest with you, I think we're probably just fine doing the second one down. After Effects corner pin supports motion blur. So let's select that second one down. You can do a couple of things. This is my suggestion that we do this. It's just a lot easier. It's going to save us a couple of steps. You'll see some of the tutorials do this where they will say, save your tracking data, and then basically they have you open up the Notepad application on your Mac or PC or whatever, paste all of that code, all of that tracking data. It's just basically a bunch of text and numbers. And then basically you're going to save it to that and then copy it from that into After Effects. All that doesn't really make any sense. It makes sense to just copy it to the clipboard, which is a temporary cache on your computer. You can always come back and re-export it if necessary, because let's face it, if you're making a mistake somewhere along the process here, you still have Mocha open. All the tracking data is still in Mocha. Come back to Mocha, make whatever fixes you need to. You're going to be retracking potentially anyway. You're going to have new tracking data. It just doesn't make any sense to go through the Notepad, copy paste to the Notepad. So anyway, we're going to go copy to clipboard. Then we're going to go back to After Effects. Put your playhead, make sure that your playhead is at the beginning of your timeline, right? Because what we're going to do is, let's take a look at this guy here. Okay, so my Charlie the Cat video. Pay attention to the Charlie the Cat video over here. Let's take a look at, now we need to do a little doctoring on our project in After Effects. Charlie the Cat has what dimensions?
320.
Is that a widescreen format like 1920 1080? 320 240 is technically 4:3 aspect ratio. Okay, so what are we going to do to put Charlie the Cat in a 16:9 aspect ratio so that Charlie the Cat isn't stretched out like this, right? Because if we apply this corner pin data and then paste that to that particular layer, it's going to say to Charlie the Cat, stretch out to a 16:9 aspect ratio when we know he's 4:3. We're going to go and make a new composition. We're going to call it, what should we call this? Tracked shot. It doesn't need to be 30 seconds. We know that our plate shot is only 10 seconds, so let's make this, let's go an even 11 seconds, just so we have a little bit of over buffer here. We don't, we don't want it to be too short, right? We can always shorten it up to fit. We definitely want it to be HD 1080 2997, and we're going to hit OK. This may not make sense at this point, but watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my Charlie the Cat file. I'm going to drop it down in here, and oh, Charlie looks so small in there, right? I'm going to go to my scale on this, and I'm going to scale him up to either fit like this. He's so big. Of course, if I'm replacing a 16:9 1920 by 1080 shot into what we just did was 16:9 1920 by 1080, I don't have to do any of this nesting, this composition type stuff like this, right? So I'm taking this shot that's 4:3, I'm fitting it into a 16:9 composition, and then what we're going to do is use this composition as the tracked element, because we're nesting a sequence, basically, is what we're doing. Okay. Let's go, maybe we could even make this fit all the way out like this, so that Charlie the Cat is going to be rocking it out, rocking in the free world. Yes?
When I get into After Effects, it won't let me import that, what we did in Mocha.
That's, yeah, you're not importing anything just yet.
Okay, that's why
You're doing a new composition.
All we've done to export that tracking data is copied to the clipboard, and now we're just leaving it sit out at the clipboard. We haven't done anything with that data yet. All I'm doing right now is I'm prepping the element that's going to get pasted to the screen.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, so once I got Charlie the Cat placed where I want him to, he's looking pretty good over there. I am going to take my tracked shot composition. I'm going to put it right in here like this. Now, what are we going to do? I took my Charlie the Cat composition.
Oh, I dropped him in.
I dropped him right on top of my plate shot down below here. Now I'm just going to hit Command V, and in theory, uh-oh, there he goes. Yeah. Boy, that's really trying to keep up, isn't it? I'm going to turn audio off and
What does Command V essentially do?
Command V.
Can you do that again?
Yeah.
Okay.
With dragging down and.
Okay. So here's my plate shot. I've prepped my effect shot, right? It's in its own composition. You guys did all that? Okay. Now, what's that?
Do we need to save that? The track shot?
Track shot is this composition that I created, and then I put my, in this case it's Charlie the Cat, I put that in that composition. I scaled it up to fill that composition because it's a tiny little file, right? I'm back over to my plate shot composition. Come on.
0003?
Yep. Okay. I have my playhead at the very beginning, and I'm going to hit Command V, because that process of just hitting Command V, pasting, I'm taking that tracking data that's saved out on the clipboard from Mocha, and it's pasting it to, before I do this, I'm sorry, I skipped a step there. I got to take this tracked shot composition, drag it down to this composition so that it lives right on top of that.
Track shot on top of?
Correct.
0003?
Correct.
And then you press.
And then with that layer selected, I'm sorry if I skipped a couple of steps. With that composition selected, I'm taking the tracking data from Mocha that's saved, that's copied to the clipboard of the computer. I'm pasting it to this layer like that.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry if I skipped a couple of steps there. And if we select that and you see, when you first select that, you'll see the corner points. That's all that tracking data. And then if we hit play, there he goes. Boom. Look at that bad boy. It's kind of sad not listening to it without the audio. I mean, we want to hear this. Yeah, come on. And I mean, Evan, being the accomplished music teacher that he is really going to appreciate such fine musical, stylings from Charlie the Cat. Right, Evan? Okay. So. Sure. Select that.
Look at all that.
If you hit the U key on that layer, there's all your keyframes.
A lot of keyframes.
Holy shamoly. So this says corner pin. If you select that composition and select the U key, which is going to bring up whatever elements, parameters, effects, anything that has keyframes applied to it, it's going to show you exactly everything that has keyframes. It now has corner pin data applied to it, upper left, upper right. All those individual corners were tracked throughout Mocha, and then position, scale, and rotation were also tracked. Okay. The challenge would be I'm going to probably do this next process on the second plate shot of the phone being held like that. Here's the only difference that we're going to have from that shot to this shot is the orientation of the device. Okay? In this case, this device is horizontal. In the case of the phone shot, the device is held vertically. What does that mean? that screen size on that device, technically it's a 16 by 9 screen held like this. What is it like this? It's 9 by 16, meaning it's 1080 by 1920. Okay? So when we do this process of prepping a new composition like this and then nesting a file in that composition, we're going to make that secondary composition. I know, vertical video, I'm all about it, right? I love it, it's my favorite thing. But in this case, we're going to take that and make that this composition that is going to get the tracking data applied to it, we're going to tell it to be 1080 by 1920. We're going to switch it to be vertically oriented. 16:9 aspect ratio, but vertically oriented. And then we're going to put Charlie the cat in that and size him to fit in that 16 by 9 aspect ratio. He's going to have the edges of the video file chopped off, or we'll scale him down to fit and have the tops and bottoms black on it, whatever, however you want to do it. But the process will be, everything will be the same except for that step. You guys follow that? So let's go ahead and do that.
Instead of doing it there, we cannot rotate this one. Like when we bring it here and then we rotate it.
You could rotate it. What you want to do, this is the composition that you would want to be switched. You want that, the composition that you're using the tracking data for, you want that to be switched. The challenge is if you've got an oddball screen, but let's face it, most screens are either a variation of 4:3, 720 by 480 is the standard definition screen size, 4:3 aspect ratio, or it's a 16 by 9 screen size. So, for screen replacement, most of the things that you see on television and movies are a variation of one of those two things, right? So aspect ratios, you're really just sticking with 4:3 or 16 by 9 aspect ratio. 4:3 is 720 by 480. 16 by 9 is 1920, 1080. So let's do this. Let's go. I'm going to select, actually, I'm going to go back to Blackboard here, and we can clearly see that what I've got running on this computer is slowing things down drastically. I'm going to go to this plate shot here, and I'm going to download this one.
Are you downloading the other one as well?
You don't have, it's a similar shot. They're both about the same, I think. So either one. And I will give you a little hint. A little secret about this particular shot is that I gotta hide this here. Hold on a second. I'm actually gonna quit Mocha because we'll start from scratch in Mocha. I'm gonna say don't save because I don't need to save this shot. Everything worked just fine. I'm quitting Mocha because I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna start fresh. Plus my machine is running really, really slowly, so I'm gonna clear out some RAM cache so I can actually function here. Say again? Not at this point, you don't need to. Not for this demo anyway. So I'm gonna go to my downloads folder. Let's see, here's my shot. Little trick about this shot, if we watch this, I can say, I know students have done this in the past. This shot works pretty well using the point tracker tool. The only spot where it sort of falls apart is somewhere down here. That part of his thumb right down here kind of covers over the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. But the corners of this shot are the top right-hand corner and the bottom left-hand corner are always unobscured, and there's very high contrast. And so if you were to apply tracking data to any one of those three corners that are unobscured through the whole shot, I also know that this shot works pretty well with the point tracker tool. So we're going to use this with the Mocha tool, but just know that this works pretty well with the other one. So I'm going to import that MVI whatever it is file. That's the one. So NVI2937, whatever that is. And then this is 17 seconds. Whoa, that's going to take a long time. We'll see how an H.264 file compares render-wise to the ProRes file that we did originally. So I'm going to make a composition using that phone tracking shot. My playhead is at the beginning of my timeline. I'm going to go animation, track in Mocha AE. Mocha AE is going to start.
Isn't just 2937?
That's the only shot that I'm using, yeah, for my plate shot.
Yep.
Yeah. So again, my new project data is here. You shouldn't see the other splash screen stuff show up because now you're into Mocha. You've already opened it. It's kind of going to remember those settings for you, assuming you come back to that computer. So basically the same process. We're going to track. I'm going to select the X-spline, and I'm going to select the area that I'm going to track. So in this case, maybe, I don't know if you guys did this, but I'm going to select a couple of different points across the surface of this thing here and just see how this works. So let's go like that and like that.
Brandon, if we
Yes.
wanted to like add a few extra points where the I guess the thumb kind of goes over the thing, over the screen, can you do that? So then you can kind of keyframe that out?
As in after the fact?
Well, not, I mean just preemptively add those keyframes over in that area, so then you can kind of plan that thumb going.
I don't know if that affects it or not. I'm not sure if adding more points to that area affects it. You certainly could give it a shot. Try it out. I honestly, I don't
So
know.
you would like go over the thumb? Like have it wider?
Give it a shot. I don't know, to be honest with
I
you.
was thinking of adding more points.
More points.
Like maybe instead of 1 point, adding like 3 in that corner.
Give it a shot.
See if it works.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I honestly, I don't know if that's going to help it or not. So.
I added a point within a point, Tim. I gotta script this whole thing. Crap. I'm just gonna use the back button. For some reason that Command Z does not like.
So something odd is going on with my machine as well. I don't know if you guys are having the same issue, but I'm simply not getting anything down here on the tracking area.
So the first thing you did was quick show.
Oh, here we go. I don't have the selection tool activated. Interesting. Okay, so the pick tool is basically, that's what your selection tool is up there. So when I selected that, it turned everything on down here. So now I'm ready to go. So I'm going to add perspective to my shot. This is, again, this is a 17-second shot. So kind of think about what you're doing here. But I'm going to track this forward. And I can already see that it's going much quicker than the previous one. In theory, what that means is it's a lower data rate of a file, and so it's tracking quicker.
Then get to your selection. Oh, it is picked. Okay, so you go down here and click track forward. Oh, yeah, finger on all front.
Don't have to put that little blue line on.
We do that after the track.
Okay, so I got, yeah.
So we track first, and then we track.
Alright, so now I think I'm caught up.
The splice. What's it called? The plan?
No, splice. Yeah. Planar, show whatever is the.
And the thumb's gonna be coming really soon. Because the thumb goes over the top of the screen. Oh yeah, now I'm cutting the thumb off. Not bad, but it's kind of getting
Yeah.
sliced, you see that?
I didn't do that on mine. Is that a problem?
So I'm just letting this track go and do its thing. It's obviously going to take a little while, so.
Darn those thumbs, you gotta be really careful with your thumb.
Yeah, but for this is just a demonstration. This
I
isn't
know, but if
trying-
you're doing this for real, it's gonna be like really careful whether you're actually holding the device.
Is that why I did?
But like, when you do movie, you know, they're doing these in movies, it's like, people are just move it fast. They gotta do a lot of testing.
I don't know how they do the screen replacement.
Because this was done really nice for us, can you imagine? A movie set? It's hard. I know.
Is that just like a piece of paper you said you cut out now?
It is. That's exactly what it is, just a piece of paper.
Yeah. That's what
Oh, cut. I missed that.
As you have that scratch off lottery ticket in the background.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
Yeah, I know. I don't.
Yeah.
I thought you already were wondering why that was there.
It's taking its time.
You have a lot of storage. Oh, nice.
I should have moved my voice straight. Because I have this pointer.
And it also looks like After Effects is open on the screen.
What's the slides?
It's before.
It's pretty much a giant.
Everywhere.
Are you the one that was shooting this video?
I did, yes.
Background's awesome.
It was
Scratch off.
at the computer directly behind you is where it was shot.
I just wanna know if they won the crossword puzzle. I mean,
Yeah.
this is just, yeah, gotta tell me. Was it $2?
All right, it's done. So my render is done. I'm going to turn on my planar surface and place this, probably in this case, I'm going to place this just outside of the white or the blue paper so that it, in theory, does a full covering of this piece of paper. So let's go right about to these things and right out here. See how that works. Let's turn on our surface. Or not. Why is it not turning
You're
on?
going beyond your screen with the planar surface?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And what's the reasoning, because of the thumb, or?
I kind of figure why not. No, because I want the the corner pin data to go just beyond the white paper. So in theory,
Oh, I see.
it will, the thing that I'm putting over top of it in After Effects will cover over that. So I won't have any bleed on the edges. So.
So don't be so tight on this, okay. All right.
So now we're taking a look at the quality of our track here.
So now I have to.
It looks pretty solid throughout.
I mean, if you were trying to make this perfect, you would zoom it in.
No, he actually went over so that, the bleed doesn't. So he didn't do it exact, so
I was
much.
wondering the same thing.
I thought it'd be nice and tight.
Those crosswords, you know.
You don't claim enough.
The big sheets. Yeah.
You know what's worse when you go in to just like pay for gas,
Yeah.
and then like you have someone that like keeps buying scratch offs in front of you, and it's like, just step aside.
Yeah.
Step aside. That's my rant.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm confident that this tracked pretty well. This works. I like this. Now I'm going to go export tracking data. I don't know, where are you guys at? Do you want me to just keep going with this?
I'm not close, In case anyone cares.
I'm going to export tracking data. I'm going to do the same thing. After Effects corner pin supports motion blur. I'm going to copy to the clipboard. It will replace the previous pile of data that we put out on that clipboard. I'm going to go back to After Effects. Now, this is where I'm going to prep a new composition, right? I'm going to call this, let's call this 9 by 16 track shot. I don't know, just so we know clearly that we're working with. Now, this is where, I don't know how many of you guys have ever done this, but made an oddball shaped composition. I think you've probably had to do this in the textbook lessons. But switching my width and height, obviously I'm just going to go 1080 on the width by 1920 on the height. But I have to, I'm going to deselect my lock aspect ratio and go 1080 by 1920, right?
Did you lock it up to that? Or did
Yeah, you can. At that point, it doesn't really matter. And I'm also gonna, I know my composition that I was working in is, what is that, 17 seconds, I think. I'm gonna make this 18 seconds. And hit OK. And looky there.
Direct shot. Woohoo!
Right.
Now you
I like it.
drag the-
Now I'm gonna put Charlie in there.
Charlie's going again.
Undo that. Let's put Charlie in there so he's nice and centered. Let's go bring up the size on Charlie.
Charlie is never gonna quite.
Now I could, stretch Charlie up so that he's that big, or I honestly don't know if the cat's name is actually Charlie.
You know?
I think it's his owner. His name is Charlie.
Alright, we're gonna stretch Charlie out.
All right, so I'm going to put him something like that. Now I've got my 9 by 16 shot. I'm going back to, you ready for this? I'm going back to my plate shot with the phone. My playhead is at the beginning of my timeline. Now I'm going up to my project. I'm going to select my 9 by 16 track shot. I'm putting that right on top of my plate shot.
Copy paste. Command.
And Command D. Something is not right here.
Oh, it shut off. Oh, it didn't work.
Oh, yours did the same thing mine did.
It shut off to the right of the phone.
Okay.
Crazy.
Reversed.
Wow, why did that not work?
Turn off the lock.
And I'm going to go Command V. Oh yeah, look at that. That's an interesting one. Do you know why this is?
Mine did the same thing.
It's the anchor point.
Anchor point.
You do not adjust position, you adjust the anchor point. You know, this is part of the reason why I address this in the why we do the I'm trying to think that that Aaron Rabinowitz tutorial, because towards the end of his tutorial he has the same issue with this, and basically it's a matter of adjusting the anchor point on, I believe it's this. So dropping it down like this, I'm just basically taking the anchor point and repositioning the file by using the anchor point, and certainly not repositioning it using,
So you're not using the hand behind tool though, you're actually using the anchor point?
yes.
Okay, gotcha. Alright.
Now the problem that I have is, why is it lower in that and not, yeah, there we go. I want it to be centered.
My overscaling didn't work.
So you could make stuff like kind of pop off your phone screen, like
Yeah.
if you got really in depth with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so what you're doing to adjust this is the anchor point. Now, why are we seeing the background of the paper? Because we don't have anything behind Charlie in our composition where we placed him. So if I want something, I would go layer, new solid layer. Maybe I'm going to put a gray background behind Charlie, right? And maybe I'm even going to add, just to be fancy, I'm going to go up here and add effects, presets, drop shadow to Charlie, and let's do something where the direction, I want them to go like this.
Is that why you refrain against from holding a phone vertically like that?
I mean, I don't really have a reason other than it's just something you don't do, man.
Well, I mean,
So anyway, now I go back here. Oh, that looks all right. Except now I still need to adjust my. Yeah, I need to adjust the anchor point now to fit this whole thing here.
That's awesome.
So.
Oh, just, yeah.
So it's when you see that, it's basically mismatched anchor points. The tracking data from Mocha has an anchor point, and when we created our new composition, the anchor point in that new composition is, it's basically, I mean, we could actually go in and look at the numbers because it's kind of it can be a pretty specific switch, but it's probably just easier to adjust X and Y anchor point data to place it where you want it manually at that point. So.
I missed the salad. What did you do with that salad? I was all focused on getting Charlie to cook. You didn't put them, okay, oh, you just put them.
where
It must be on top of
do you want to do it? I'm not.
composition.
Didn't you do the size?
No.
The video like a cat.
Oh, no, sorry. I didn't see that. You went to the other composition. Charlie, yeah, the Charlie one. That was recently where.
You guys okay if I just play that on loop for the rest of the afternoon?
Please.
You put it below
What
it.
good you did.
You just watch that over.
All right.
And you can like feather the edges of that to make it.
And then you
look
play
more
the video,
natural.
play the video
Yep.
a little bit, so you can see
Yep.
where Charlie comes in. And then you just have the drop shadow.
I mean, I have this the quality turned down quite a bit just so we can render faster, but
It's full on the screen graph.
Yeah, like a Gaussian blur maybe.
yeah, I just turned it up slightly, but oh, full quality is not doing its thing. Anyway. All right, gang. So that's the second process in motion tracking. So the assignment, if you take a look at this real quick, is shoot one video file. I'm making this pretty simple. You can do this all, with your phone or your computer screen, either one. But shoot one video file that you'll do a screen replacement on, this time with a handheld device or a laptop computer. I'm fine if you want to do that. So, I mean, the whole point is either the camera is moving like this. So if the screen is sitting on a table, shoot it like this so the camera is moving. Or you're holding it like this and it's moving in your hand like we just did. Or if you want to hold it like this, whichever. The whole process is do something similar to what we just did. We know that it would work really well probably to put a piece of paper over the screen. That was just a matter of tracing the size of my screen, putting some masking tape on it so it didn't, leave a sticky goo on my phone, and then shooting a shot of it. Well lit is obviously always preferred, properly exposed. That always works really well. And I have a very simple, at least 5 seconds long. So 5 seconds is the limit. I'm not looking for anything more than that. We just did, this last shot that we just did was 17 seconds, and we could see that it worked pretty well. So be creative. The camera should be moving. And then it's basically this process. So it's what we just did. There's a couple of tutorials. I will say that the process that our own Rabinowitz does in that couple of videos that we have right here, so down here, these 3 videos that this guy does, he has an added extra step to that. So what he does is it's a shot. And it's really, I would encourage you to watch it because he goes through this process, but he has an extra step. And the extra step is masking out. He creates a spline around his laptop screen, and then he makes a secondary spline, and he uses it to mask out the actual screen itself, so that the part that he's using Mocha to track is the matte finished bezel around his laptop screen. Okay? And the reason he does that is because he wants to exclude the screen from the tracking data because of the reflections that the screen creates from the lights that are around it. All right? Because that causes the track to lose out. So his extra step in there is to mask out that second. So he creates, we only created
It's
one layer.
basically, it's what you're doing with the white paper, it's what he's doing with a mask.
In software, yes.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
So
So.
that saves you a step if you use the paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he also has a very clearly defined bezel in the shot around his laptop to do that with. So it would almost behoove you to, if you're going to do it like this particular laptop, unless you have like a white screen that you can fill it with, and then clearly see where the bezel is for yourself to create that. Like some laptops, they just don't have that. Depending on what's on the screen, you may not have that clearly defined area with which to mask out. Okay, so it's similar to what we just did, but he adds an extra step in software where he creates a second bezel, or spline, I should say, to use as a mask. And then he does the exact same process that we just did, corner pin, right? So he selects the corner pin areas. He turns on the logo and the grid to see how the track works. He actually goes in and explains in some more detail about the keyframing process to fix where the drift happens on some of his shots, because the footage that he's using, that tutorial is actually quite a few years old from, I think, like the first version of Mocha. So it's old and it's kind of interesting. The interface looks different, but all the tools are still all there, just so you're aware if you do go into that tutorial to watch that. And then the other 2 tutorials down here are using more modern versions of Mocha. They're both about 5 or 6 minutes apiece, and they go through similar processes. So I would strongly suggest that you go through those things for recap and kind of rehashing over this whole thing. Okay? So have fun with it. It's kind of like I said, this is getting into the fun stuff of After Effects. Next week.
See, now I understand why you would use motion tracking. I mean, with the text, I guess it's okay, but I feel like I could do that without motion tracking.
Yeah, screen replacement
Yeah.
has a little more of a
Yeah.
practical application. The text tracking does have a pretty practical application. I mean, I've used it in videos for commercial purposes
I think I
and
just
stuff.
need to move in the video and
Yeah.
then.
What works well is like the drone shot that we worked on.
Yeah.
That's where it works really well. If your camera is on a slider,
Yeah.
that works out really
Yep,
well.
I could really see it working in
so
all that.
good controlled camera moves are where it works. The problem with handheld footage and little phone footage or DSLR footage is as soon as you introduce that rolling shutter that's inherent in most of these cameras, that's where motion